Yeah. Okay, great. Hare Krishna. We're halfway through chapter 7, Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. And the chapter's called Jhansi, the League of Devotees. So we're just going to chant Mangalacharan and prayers together and carry on. Last week got really ecstatic by the end. Everyone was fired up by the end of it. So let's see what happens. Okay. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvatam Savajivam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakan Vitam Cha Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Kantana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vichapanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Okay, so would anyone like to start reading? Because we always start, but if anyone else would like to start, just, Lucy wants to start, please. Yeah, thank you. Hare Krishna.
It was during a morning walk with Radhalal Mullik that Abai first spotted the Bharati Bhavan, a picturesque temple complex across from the large Antia Pond. The neighbourhood known as Antia Tal was quiet and sparsely populated, but it was near Sipri Road, the main thoroughfare between downtown Jhansi and Sipri Bazaar. Abai inquired from Mr. Mullik about the temple, and together they turned from the main road and walked down a sloping path that led through the main gates of the compound. There they found several secluded acres, nestled within a grove of neem and mango trees. The main structure was the Radha Memorial. It was small like a chapel, but its proportions were stout and bold. Sitting on an octagonal stone base, it rose on 8 ornate pillars of red and white chipped marble to a stone dome on top. 2 elephants bearing the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, on their upraised trunks decorated the entrance. Concrete bunting and striped patterns of red, green and blue added to the decorative yet massive effect. The entrance was marked with the words Radha Smarak, Smarak, carved in Hindi script, and above it, the English translation, Radha Memorial. When Abai saw the Sanskrit inscription across the side of the stone temple, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, he turned to Radhalal Mullik and said strongly, "The Lord has built this building for my use." From that moment, Abai was determined to have the building. Mr. Mullik explained that the temple had been built in 1939 as a memorial to the wealthy Vaishnav landowner, Radhe Bai, but at the present was not in use. Dr. Prabhakar Misra, whom Abai had already met on several occasions, was occupying some of the rooms, but otherwise it was deserted. Mr. Mullik and Abai sought Dr. Misra in his quarters in the main building, and when Dr. Misra saw Abai's enthusiasm, he invited Abai to stay there with him. Dr. Misra confirmed that except for his Sunday morning Gita class, the facility was sitting idle, and he welcomed Abai to carry on his writing and preaching there. Abai liked the idea. Immediately he began thinking of uses for the buildings, surveying the land with increasing interest. A second larger building, also with stone pillars and facades, held a hall and 5 rooms. Abai made mental plans for each room. In this room, kirtan and lectures with large gatherings. In this room, the deity of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In these rooms, resident brahmacharis and sannyasis. Guests here, an office there, a printing press here. There was even land for grazing a cow. It was a self-contained unit. Hundreds of people could come for kirtan, prasadam, and discourses. Preachers could go out from here distributing Back to Godhead magazines. Some could even go abroad with Lord Chaitanya's message. As Abai and his companions walked through the compound, appreciating it as a suitable place to start an ashram, his companions encouraged him, saying they were sure that Mr. Reva Sankar Bayal, the agent who handled all the properties of Radhabai's descendants, would have no objection to Abai living there. Why couldn't the landlord give him the buildings? Abai asked. They were simply going to waste. If it were actually to be a memorial to Radha, it should be used in Krishna's service, since Krishna is Radha's worshipful Lord. Abai was determined and his friends agreed to help him. First they met with Ram Mitra, who said that he was such a close friend of Mr. Bayal's that Mr. Bayal would probably give the place simply at his request. Dr. Shastri said that he also wanted to go to impress upon Mr. Bayal how much the people of Jhansi wanted Abai to have this place. Does someone else want to continue?
Yeah, we can have a read. When Reva Sankar Bayal met with his friend Ram Mitra, also present were Abai, Dr. Shastri, Radhalal Mullik, Prabhakar Mishra, and Surya Mukhi Sharma, a young, educated Jhansi woman. They presented the case from several angles, and Mr. Bayal listened. He agreed that he wasn't using the place at present, and this seemed to be a good cause. He agreed to let Abai use the facilities for his League of Devotees for as long as he liked. And at Abai's request, he agreed to become a member of the League. They shook hands. On behalf of the estate, Mr. Bayal presented the Bharati Bhavan properties in charity to Abai Charan Dey and the League of Devotees. During December and January, Abai prepared a League of Devotees charter. He wanted to begin vigorous, extensive preaching, following the example of his spiritual master. Once he began to set his goals to paper, the project immediately began to expand, beyond Jhansi, beyond India. Of course, the League of Devotees was for the young people of Jhansi. They were already expressing great interest, but Abai's charter described more than merely evening classes and kirtan. It was a broad scheme, including a description of the 4 orders of society, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra, and detailed plans to accommodate a worldwide religious movement. The charter set forth a probationary period for prospective members. It described spiritual initiation. It arranged for economic reciprocation between individual members and the League. It arranged to provide lodgings for preachers, and it defined prohibited activities: illegitimate connection with women, intoxicating habit, diets other than regulated strictly on vegetable kingdom, gambling, and unnecessary sporting or recreation enterprises. To establish his league with the registrar in Lucknow, Abai required a memorandum of association signed by the league members. In this document, which was to list the objectives of the society, Abai expressed his vision for the continuation of his spiritual master's mission. Like his godbrothers who had created new mats after the dissolution of the Gaudiya Math, Abai was forming a new branch of the Gaudiya Sampradaya to be called the League of Devotees. He was not simply claiming proprietorship of a few buildings. He was establishing a Krishna-conscious society that would expand into a world movement. His intentions were clearly not insular, but were directed towards creating centers for spiritual development all over the world. Abai wrote, Lord Chaitanya revealed the transcendental process of approaching the absolute Godhead, and in his teachings nothing appears to be absurd from the point of human reasoning, and nothing against any religion as accepted by the human and civilized world. In enumerating the League's goals, he included the opening of centers in all parts of the world, thus establishing the League as an international organization for spiritual developments through education, culture, as also by recruiting members from all nations, creeds, and castes. The League would publish literature in many languages and print a monthly magazine, Back to Godhead. Abai obtained the necessary signatures for his memorandum of association. He then took the train to Lucknow and on February 4th paid the deposit of 50 rupees and filed his application. He returned to Jhansi.
In his room in the Radha Memorial, Abai would rise daily at 4 a.m. and arouse his young neighbor, Prabhu Mishra. From 4 to 5, Abai would write. At 5, he would walk in the Antiatal area. At 5:30, bathe, and then chant Hare Krishna on his beads until 7, when he would hold a class on the Chaitanya Charitamrita or Srimad Bhagavatam, although Prabhu Mishra was usually the only listener. At 8, he would return to his literary work, typing until after 10, when he would begin to prepare a meal. In the afternoon, he would often go around Jhansi, meeting people and preaching, looking for anyone willing to take part in the League of Devotees. In the early evening, he would write until 7, when he would prepare for the kirtan and lecture he would hold at one of the various places in the city, depending on where he was invited. Although Abai had no money for continuing Back to Godhead, a well-established part of his preaching was to write essays regardless of whether they were to be immediately published or not. He wrote a long essay, some 24,000 words, entitled Message of Godhead. He also wrote a series of chapters propounding the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, especially as they applied to world problems and science of devotion, a summary guide of Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. On May 16, 1953, Abai held a grand opening celebration for the League of Devotees with continuous readings, kirtan and prasadam distribution from early morning until night. The buildings were decorated with leaves, flowers and many earthen water pots. In the evening, when attendance was the greatest, Abai lectured from the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita on Rajaguya Yoga. Prabhu Mishra conducted a fire sacrifice, and several brahmanas chanted mantras from Brahma Samhita. Guests received a 16-page prospectus containing Abai's essay on the need for the League and an excerpt from the charter explaining its goals. It was signed Om Tat Sat, Abai Charana Bhaktivedanta, founder and secretary. The opening was a pleasant, auspicious event for the people of Jhansi, and hundreds gathered in the evening for Abai's lecture. Dr. Sharma, a chartered member of the League and editor of the Jhansi daily newspaper, had already publicized the event and was planning a write-up for the following day. The Gaudiya Patrika also reported on the opening. The editor of the local Theosophical Society Sri Lakshminarayan Rajapali, was also present, although he holds different philosophical opinions from Bhaktivedanta Prabhu. He is very sympathetic with this movement. In the assembly, there were many people worth mentioning. The inauguration and establishing of deities will be done soon. The assembly will request Rajapati Sri Mukhi to perform the inauguration ceremony. Their centre has been registered by the Society's Registration Act. Sri Bharati Bhavan is the name of the League's building, in which they have a lecture hall and a temple that resembles a palace. The assembly has many activities at the centre, and there are also facilities for members to live there. Abai felt confident that the Bharati Bhavan would now be established and recognized as the home of the League of Devotees. He was happy to see that the opening day was not merely his private affair, but an event celebrated by the most important citizens of Jhansi. Somebody else like to read?
Past life was streaming further and further behind him each day. But one day after he had been in Jhansi about 6 months, a telegram arrived bringing a startling reminder of his past connections. His business in Allahabad had been burglarized. His servants had stolen all his money and medicine and anything else of value. It had been a loss of 7,000 rupees. Abe read the news, laughed, and uttered the Bhagavatam verse. Asyaham anugra nami harishita danam stane tato danam prayashyanti asya savajana dukya. Prabhu Mishra advised Abe to go back to Allahabad to recover what he could. No, Abe said, this is good for me. I was sad, but now one great attachment has come to an end. My life is fully surrendered and dedicated to Sri Sri Radha Madhava. Abe's son, Vrindavan, soon arrived in Jhansi, requesting Abe to come to Calcutta to revive the business. Abe Charandi and sons, and they sat together in Abe's room and the Radha Memorial. Abe explained that he could not go back. He requested Vrindavan to stay and assist him by doing typewriting, but Vrindavan returned to Calcutta. From his first meeting with Prabhupada, Abai had urged a younger, educated man to take part in the League of Devotees as a full-time assistant. Although as lecturer and medical officer, Prabhupada had many duties at the university, he helped as much as he felt he could. He soon became Abai's most active assistant. Abai appointed him secretary to the League and after several months initiated him. Thus Abe became Prabhupada's spiritual master and Prabhupada became Abe's first disciple. As a preacher, Abe was duty-bound to set disciples, giving them the Hare Krishna mantra and the Pampara instructions as he had received them from his spiritual master. Prabhupada, however, not being a completely surrendered disciple, remained independent, more like an assistant than a disciple. As university principal, Sanskrit scholar, and medical doctor, he continued to pursue his own interests also. Srila Prabhupada, that League of Devotees, I was alone. There was some students, but they were not so active. I was doing everything. I wanted to organize with Prabhupada Mishra and others, but they were not interested to devote their whole time. If you asked him to do full-time work, that he'd not do. But he was initiated. They were all learned scholars in Sanskrit, medical men.
Thus, when the Gaudiya Patrika had reported the opening day ceremonies, it was referred to Prabhupada in honourable terms, and as a boy's partner in the League of Devotees, although he was actually Bhaktivedanta's initiated disciple. Bhaktivedanta Prabhu summoned the service of Honourable Acharya Srimad Prabhupada Mishra Shastri, Kaila Poetry, Vaikarna, Grammar, Vedanta, Philosophy, Tirtha, BIS, MSA to perform the sacrifice. He is the principal of the college in which the Vedas and Vedangas are taught and degrees are given. He is also the assistant manager of the League of Devotees. According to time and circumstance, a boy was engaging this young man in devotional service. A boy was interested not in collecting disciples but in establishing the League of Devotees, and for that he needed assistance. Prabhupada Mishra. When I first met Swamiji, he said to me, "You're a Brahmin and a Prabhupada, and you are eating in a restaurant. You come with me. I will feed you myself. I shall cook." So he would prepare prasadam, and offering it to the Lord, he would take Bhagavat prasadam together. In this way, by his mercy, I got the chance to take prasadam. He also said to me, "You become Ch.7, shaven." So I went with shaven head to the college where I taught, and everyone laughed at me. When I told Swamiji the situation, he said, "Since you are a medical officer, you can grow your hair." When I took Diksha, Swamiji gave me the name Acharya Prabhakar. My original name was Prabhakar Mishra. So he says, "You don't write Mishra, you are Acharya Prabhakar." He gave me the name and offered me Tulsi Mala and put tilik on my forehead and tied a Kanti Mala around my neck. He registered the foundation of League of Devotees, and he appointed me as his secretary for preaching throughout the world. We used to go to villages for Sankirtan and Bhagavad Gita continuously. A boy started the Sankirtan movement in Jhansi, at first accompanied only by Acharya Prabhupada. He used to walk about the neighborhood of Nyabansi, chanting Hare Krishna as he continued this practice. His group gradually increased until 50 people were gathering regularly to go out on parikram, chant together and visit temples. Afterwards, they would gather at Radha Memorial for evening lecture. When a boy would go to preach in the nearby villages, he would usually be accompanied by whatever league members were free. Once he went with Acharya Prabhakar on Padayatra, traveling on foot and preaching, to Chirogan, some 20 miles from Jhansi. In Chirogan, there lived a nationally known poet, Mitala Sarangupta, who received the boy and his disciples at his home for dinner. A boy told his host that since he was an accomplished poet, he would write something glorifying Krishna, and the poet agreed. After preaching in Chirogan, a boy and Prabhupada returned to Jhansi, spending one day in each of 5 villages along the way. At night, the villagers would gather and a boy would lead kirtan. He explained to Prabhupada that although most of these simple farmers were not scholars in Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, they could achieve the highest spiritual benefits simply by kirtan. A boy was well received by the villagers, who begged him in return soon to give him, who begged him to return soon and give them notice next time so they could prepare a proper reception.
While preaching locally, Abhay was simultaneously working to give an international scope to his League of Devotees. He wrote to government agencies asking them to help him expand his genuine educational project. And he also tried to recruit preachers from amongst his friends. He wrote to his old college classmate, Rupan Mitra, in Calcutta, inviting him to join in worldwide missionary activities. My mission desires to train up 40 trainees, and I have asked help from the government for this useful educational purpose. I want that you may be one of the trainees in this regard, and you can ask Kartik Dada to help join us in the spirit. You will know from the papers sent to you how we live and what we do, and thus you can make up your mind whether it is possible for you to join us. The first thing is that we want to train up some retired men in the Vanaprastha life and some young men in the Brahmachari life. I have no inclination for the sannyas life, which is rather a difficult job for the fallen people of this age. The so-called sannyasis in red garments have spoiled the good name of such order of life. Abai also asked Rupan, kindly let me know the charges of this advertisement in the English and vernacular papers of Calcutta. Educational. Wanted. Candidates from any nationality to qualify themselves as real Brahmins for preaching the teachings of Bhagavad Gita for all practical purposes throughout the whole world. Deserving candidates will be provided with free boarding and lodging. Apply A.C. Bhaktivedanta, founder and secretary of the League of Devotees, Bharati Bhavan, P.O., Jhansi, UP. Abai wanted a deed stating that the Bharati Bhavan belonged to the League of Devotees. So far, he had only a promise. Thinking of Jhansi as a permanent headquarters, he wanted a written commitment. When he approached Reva Shankar Bayal for a deed of gift, Mr. Bayal gave Abai a form requesting him to pay 500 rupees to register the buildings. But since Abai had just suffered a loss of 7,000 rupees in Allahabad and had recently spent 3,000 rupees in his preaching, much of it going towards the opening day festival, he found himself unable to raise even 500 rupees. Acharya Prabhakar, despite his academic position, had very little money and was being subsidized by his parents with 3 rupees a day. Most of Abai's congregation, especially the students, were in a similar position. Mr. Bayal's request for 500 rupees didn't seem urgent, nor did he say what would happen if Abai couldn't pay. But he soon made another request. Mr. Abai Charan Dey should buy the Bharati Bhavan for 5,000 rupees. It was disconcerting. The generous gift had turned into a purchase offer. The people in town were already referring to the property as Abai Bhaktivedanta's ashram, and the League of Devotees was printed in large letters across the wall of the compound. When pressed by Abai's friends, Mr. Bayal assured them that Abai could go on living there, but ultimately he would have to buy. Mr. Bayal said he would give the League of Devotees first consideration and a good price. Abai worried, not knowing what the landlord would do next. If the League could purchase the property, that would be best. But he had been unable to raise even 500 rupees. 5,000 seemed impossible. Abai found no strong financial backing from his congregation. His League did not include even a single full-time worker. He did know of one way to raise money, his pharmaceutical business. He still had a small operation being run by his son in Calcutta. Abai had formerly been earning 3,000 rupees a month. He considered approaching God Brothers for help, but the prospects for earning the money himself seemed more likely. For 30 years, he had earned money by his pharmaceutical business, and he could do it again for the most worthy cause. Okay, next. That's okay. Next person.
I'll carry on then. When he arrived in Calcutta in the spring of 1954, he was without money. He chose to live with his godbrothers at the Gaudiya Sangha in Chepla, the same neighbourhood his family lived in. Since he had no money, the head of the ashram bore his expenses. Abai gave daily discourses on Srimad Bhagavatam, which the Gaudiya Sangha brahmacharis highly appreciated. Krishna Kumara, sorry, I've got a new phone. Things are happening. Krishna Kumara Brahmachari, even after he left, his sweet melodious voice would ring in my ears. He used to often express a desire to go abroad and preach. One of his sons was running a small business, female tone laboratory, and thus supporting the family. Abai knew that his wife would not be interested in his work in Jhansi, His son had been there but had not been impressed. The family would see his preaching in Jhansi as a threat to their home life. Abai, however, was sustaining himself by his vision, which was now taking practical shape, of a world reformed by Krishna consciousness. He even thought of opening a branch of the League of Devotees in Calcutta. But inevitably, he was plunged again into family responsibilities. Some of his children were still unmarried. Rent and bills had to be paid. Even if he were to develop the Vimaltone laboratory, the family would demand whatever he earned. And even if he were to accede to their demands, live at home and give up preaching, the greatest difficulty would still remain. They weren't serious about devotional service, nor could he change them. What was the use of conducting a business if they would not be devotees? He visited his family, and the same old scene occurred. Local friends came to visit, and Abai began preaching, giving Bhagavad Gita classes, just as he had been doing in Jhansi. Meanwhile, his wife and the rest of the family would take tea in a separate room. Srila Prabhupada. I wanted as much as possible to get her to work with me in spreading Krishna consciousness, to get her help, but she was very determined. She wouldn't help me in spreading Krishna consciousness. So finally, after many years, I could understand she would not be any assistance to me. She was very attached to drinking tea. I was always telling her not to drink tea because I wanted to have a nice Vaishnava family. So although I was repeatedly telling her, this time I finally said, you have to choose between me or tea. Either the tea goes or I go. In this way, I was even criticizing my own family, but because they were thinking I was the husband or father, they couldn't take my instructions seriously. So she replied, give up tea drinking or give up my husband. Well, I will have to give up my husband then. Of course, she thought I was joking. One day, Radharani made a great mistake. There was a system of barter in which a customer would place on a scale an object a shopkeeper considered valuable, and the shopkeeper would then balance it with an equal weight of merchandise. So while Abai was out, his wife took his worshipable Bhagavatam to the market and traded it for tea biscuits. When Abai came home and looked for the book, she told him what had happened. She hadn't taken the matter as a serious thing. She was out of tea biscuits. But Abai was shocked. At first he felt depressed, but then a wave of absolute resolution passed over him. His family life was finished. When he told them he was leaving, they didn't understand what he meant. He had been leaving for 30 years. He was always coming and going. When he walked out the door, they thought, there he goes again, he's leaving. It was the usual routine. Everyone would see, even the neighbours. Mr. D was going again. He had been at home, now he was going. He would be back again. But Abai knew he would never come back. Srila Prabhupada. Before leaving my family, I wanted to get all my sons and daughters married, but some of them disagreed. But then the time is up. Never mind whether they are married or not. Let them see to their own business. Suppose I die immediately, who will take care of my daughter? At that time we say, God will take care. Then why not now? God will take care. My Guru Maharaj used to say that renunciation of family life was civil suicide. If you commit civil suicide, if you commit suicide, that is criminal. But that renunciation of family is voluntarily committing suicide. Now I'm dead, whatever you like, you do. Krishna says, Sarvadharman Parichajaya, give up all religion. So family is Gradharma, the religion of the family. But Krishna says, give that up. But that attachment is there. And if we say that feeling of attachment has to be given up gradually, then That we cannot do because the attachment is there. But if God will take care of them if I die immediately, then why not now? His spiritual emotions were so turbulent that he wasn't thinking of going to Jhansi. He wanted to take a train to anywhere. Then he remembered some old god brother friends who were living in an ashram in Jhargram, only a short train ride south of Calcutta. So he borrowed 10 rupees from a friend and bought a ticket to Jhargram. Does anyone want to continue?
It was a small mat. When Abai arrived, he was welcomed by Paramahamsa Maharaj, Damodar Maharaj, and others. Paramahamsa Maharaj had been present when Abai had first met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and he remembered Abai as he had looked then, dressed in white khadi, looking like a Gandhian anarchist. Abai explained to him, I couldn't fulfill my family's needs, so now let me preach the message of Lord Chaitanya. Abai told him how his business had failed and how he had willingly left his family and was now destitute. Paramahamsa Maharaj. When Abai arrived, he appeared very poor, starving. He had no means. He came alone to the mat, and when he arrived, he only chanted Hare Krishna, nothing else. Abai spent his time in Jhargram, chanting the holy name and becoming settled in detachment from his family. For several days he chanted japa almost continuously. Paramahamsa Maharaj would lecture in the evenings, and then Abai would also speak on Bhagavad Gita. But as time passed, his thoughts turned again to Jhansi, and he soon felt ready to go back to the League of Devotees. He had to secure the buildings and go on with the preaching. But before returning, he obtained a large deity of Lord Chaitanya that he planned to install at the Bharati Bhavan. Ironically, he had gone to Calcutta to do business and raise money, but now he had no money, no business, and no family responsibilities. He had been married 36 years, and now, at age 58, he had fully taken to the Vanaprastha order. Now he could dedicate his life fully to preaching Krishna consciousness. Abai did not adopt the saffron dress of a Vanaprastha, but continued wearing a white dhoti and kurta. The people of Jhansi had always known him as a preacher with no family, ever since he had first arrived a year and a half before. Now he was returning to them with the deity of Lord Chaitanya and a determination to establish Lord Chaitanya's temple in Jhansi. Abai met with a warm welcome from Acharya Prabhakar and others, but he also met with competition for possession of the Radha Memorial. It began with a Sanskrit conference, the Bundelkhand Sanskrit Sammelan, which brought to Jhansi the governor of the province, Ch.7, and his wife, Lilamrita. An active social organizer, Lilamrita Munshi had opened several branches of the Mahila Samiti Sangha, a society that aimed at socially uplifting women by teaching them secretarial skills and English. Two educated Jhansi ladies, Chandramukhi and Suryamukhi, wanted such a women's social program for Jhansi, and they took the opportunity to approach Lilamrita Munshi during her visit. She inspired them, and they began to talk about where in Jhansi they could open one of her social centres. Perhaps, suggested one of the ladies, the Bharati Bhavan could be used. Although Suryamukhi Sharma had been one of the sympathizers who had first approached Mr. Bayal on behalf of Abai Charan Dey and had asked that he be given the Bharati Bhavan for his League of Devotees, she felt that the ladies' cause was more important, and she knew that Abai's ownership of the buildings was not settled. The women agreed that the buildings would be an excellent facility for the Mahila Samiti Sangha branch and that their cause was more urgent than Abai Charan's. Surya Mukhi, assured of support by the governor's wife, called on A.C. Bhaktivedanta. She explained that his league of worldwide Vaishnavas would never take shape. He was a nice person and she liked him, but she didn't think he could realize his extraordinary expectations. She suggested he vacate the Bharati Bhavan so that the governor's wife could organize a women's social center. You can go here and there for the sake of building a temple, she told him. You are free to travel anywhere, but these poor women in Jhansi have nothing, so they must be given these buildings for their use. She found him adamantly opposed. No, Abhay said, find another building. Abhay argued that his work was not just for a section of people, but for all living beings. Surya Mukhi left frustrated. Abhay was surprised that a member of the League of Devotees was now working against him, and the maneuver was being backed by the governor's wife. Mrs. Munshi could work at a much more influential level without having to confront Abhay directly and without his even knowing what she was doing. After she talked with Mr. Bayal, word got around that Mr. Bayal had been pressured to persuade Abhay Charan to relinquish his claim on the Bharati Bhavan. Mr. Bayal owned a cinema house in Jhansi, and there was talk that he could have a lot of difficulty with his operator's license unless Abhay Charan vacated the Radha Memorial.
In December 1954, Mrs. Munshi wrote Abhay in reference to his failure to raise the 5,000 rupees. Dear Bhaktivedanta-ji, she wrote, you wanted to organize there, but you could not. But I have got this institution, Mahila Samiti. Why not give it to me? Abhay was of a mind to resist. He had lawyer friends who advised him that even though he was opposed by the governor's family, he had a good case that would stand up well in court. India's tradition of respect for religious buildings was on his side. Abhay replied to Mrs. Munshi, introducing himself as the founder of the League of Devotees. He explained the goal of the League, enclosed a copy of his prospectus, and presented many statements by prominent people, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Sri Sitaram, Raja Mahendra Pratap, and even her husband, Sri K.M. Munshi, praising the wonderful work of the League of Devotees. He also mentioned that the president of the League had recently received a 100 rupee donation in Mathura from His Excellency the Governor, Mr. Munshi himself. Abhay said that although work had been going on slowly but peacefully in Jhansi, his mind had now been bothered by Mrs. Munshi's negotiations. He requested her not to pressure anyone about his occupying the Bharati Bhavan, though he admitted, if you or any one of your agents do try, the pressure will be more wakeful. I am a non-entity in that comparison. Abhay hoped that by his presenting the details of his league, she would understand that his was a better cause than the Mahila Samiti. He quoted the first 3 verses of the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, wherein Lord Krishna describes how the ancient science of Bhakti Yoga is received through Parampara, the order of succession from one teacher to the next, and how kings are responsible for seeing that Krishna consciousness spreads for everyone's benefit. He also argued that since, according to Bhagavad Gita, only a few amongst thousands and thousands of men endeavor for self-realization, and since the League of Devotees engaged its members in self-realization, he was providing an important and rare service. He offered to meet with Mrs. Munshi along with some 15 sannyasis from the area and suggested that she work cooperatively with them and understand the importance of the League. The League of Devotees was benefiting all classes. As Sri Krishna had said in Bhagavad Gita, even one of a low birth can attain the shelter of the Supreme Lord. But the Mahila Samiti, Abhay pointed out, was based on bodily conceptions of caste, creed, colour and sex. Therefore, it could not be as important a cause. Abhay closed by requesting Mrs. Munshi not to try to occupy the Radha Memorial, which was already being used for a noble and well-appreciated cause. He signed, A.C. Bhaktivedanta, founder and secretary, League of Devotees. Aware that he was involved in an intrigue, Abhay organized his thoughts and set down on paper a short history outlining important events surrounding his possession of the Bharati Bhavan. Short history. 1. I came to Jhansi sometime in October 1952. 2. I delivered some lectures at Gita Mandir on Gandhi Jayanti Day, 1952. 3. Made acquaintance with Prabhakar Shastri. 4. My idea of League of Devotees implemented. 5. He took me to Reva Shankar for Bharati Bhavan. 6. Sri Reva Shankar agreed to hand over the Bharati Bhavan to League of Devotees, and he agreed to become a member of it in the presence of Prabhakar, Mitraji, and myself. 7. I write letters from Allahabad to confirm. 8. He confirmed my letter on 10/12/52. 9. Prabhakar intimated the desire of Reva Shankar on 1/1/53. I got the document needed for League of Devotees and came to Jhansi for signature of the members. Reva Shankar signed and agreed to become an executive member. 11. The document was submitted for registration on 4/2/53 at Lucknow, returned on 10/10/53. The League of Devotees ceremoniously started 16th of May 53 and work began. So I am occupying the building since then and continuing my work. Abai went on to enumerate more than 30 points, including news publicity and congratulations he had received. He listed the story of how he came here, sacrificing my business and family. I received a telegram from Allahabad instructing the news of burglary by breaking lock. I could not attend the business for work here, and it was closed subsequently at a loss of 7,000 rupees. Abai thought of turning to some of his sannyasi godbrothers for help. If he or they could purchase the buildings, his competitors would be silenced. He thought it worthwhile to interest his godbrothers in purchasing the buildings as an adjunct to their own missions. Vrindavan was not far away, a 4-hour train ride to Mathura and then a short Tanga ride. He had gone there on pilgrimage in October of 1953 and had even looked at an available room in a temple near Keshigat with the idea of staying there someday. He had also travelled there several other times since he had begun residing in Jhansi. This time he went to the Imlitala temple to see his godbrother, Bhakti Saranga Goswami, and asked if he would like to take over the proprietorship of the Bharati Bhavan so that it might be used for preaching Krishna consciousness according to the teachings of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. But Bhakti Saranga Goswami was not interested. After approaching another godbrother, Damodar Maharaj, who was also not interested in Jhansi, Abai took the short Tanga ride back to Mathura to see another godbrother, Ch.7 Maharaj. Ch.7 Maharaj was in Mathura with a group of his disciples to establish a center, but he had not yet located a suitable place. So when Abai told him about the buildings in Jhansi, he was interested. Abai and Ch.7 Maharaj composed a letter to Mr. Bayal, presenting their requests and the aims of their movement, and then traveled to Jhansi in a group. Abai and Ch.7 Maharaj with his disciples. Ch.7 Maharaj and his party stayed for several days in Jhansi holding kirtans and lectures. They had an appointment with Reva Shankar Bayal, but Mr. Bayal broke it, so they had to wait to see him on another day. Meanwhile, Ch.7 Maharaj had time to form an opinion of Jhansi and discuss with Abai the likelihood of making this his headquarters. He noted that the people were receptive, but that the location was too remote. Even before meeting with Mr. Bayal, Ch.7 Maharaj felt reluctant to stake his whole mission in Jhansi. Abai agreed, aware that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had said that a preacher should go into the big cities and not practice his bhajan in seclusion, and he admitted that after 2 years in Jhansi, he had made no full-time followers. When they finally met with Mr. Bayal failed to present clear terms for purchasing the property. He said they were eligible to buy it, but he made their use of the buildings conditional. He wanted to have a say in the nature of the programs they would hold. Abai knew that this was just a further sign of shady dealings, and he suspected that Mr. Bayal was under mounting pressure to give the buildings over to the Mahila Samiti. Ch.7 Maharaj, having lost all interest, decided to go back to Mathura, and he invited Abai to join him. But Abai remained. Mr. Bayal wanted him out, and he even returned Abai's deposit of 210 rupees, claiming that Abai now had no justification for residing at the Bharati Bhavan. Abai noted down the latest events in his short history. 29. He has also given me a check for 210 rupees in lieu of my deposit money with him, but he has no money in the bank. The bank has returned it with remark. 30. The money which was given to him was misappropriated by him for his own purpose, and now he has given a false check with an arrangement with the bank. 31. It is plain cheating to me from the beginning to the end. 32. I must be compensated for all the money before I can leave the buildings. But he saw it as the inscrutable will of Krishna. Events and opinions were turning him against conducting a mission in Jhansi. It no longer seemed auspicious. Srila Prabhupada, I wanted to start from there. It was a nice big house. It was not given to me rightly, but I was using. So somehow or other, she got imagination that this house is very nice. She was the governor's wife. Through collector and through government officials, she made pressure. So of course, there were many lawyer friends. They advised me, you do not give up. But I thought, who's going to litigate? I thought that I have left my home, and now I should take up litigation? No, I don't want this house. If anyone else wants to carry on.
Okay. Abai remembered how the Gaudiya Mat preachers had expended their energy for years in the courts. Having terminated his long entanglement with family and business, he had no taste for a legal fight. He could have fought, but he remembered what Ch.7 Maharaj had said about Jhansi's being out of the way. Of course, the whole thing had just sprung up here. Otherwise, Abai would never have chosen to establish his worldwide league in such an obscure place. The educated young men and women wished him well, just as they had good wishes for the Ladies' League, the Theosophy Society, the Arya Samaj, and many other causes. But their good intentions were certainly short of pure surrender and devotion. Even his one disciple could offer him only part-time help. But these considerations had not been sufficient to force him out. The real thing was that he was being driven out. Srila Prabhupada, if I did not leave, nobody could drive me. That was a fact. But I thought, who is going to litigate these things? It is the governor's wife, and she is pressing through collector. The manager who is in charge, he had some cinema house, so they had to renew the license. And the collector pressed him that unless you arrange for this house, we are not going to renew your license. I thought, unnecessarily this man will be in trouble. I will have to pay many rupees, and she is the governor's wife. He decided to leave. He told his friends to carry on the League of Devotees in his absence. They were sad to see him go, and yet even some of his friends openly praised the work of the Ladies' Society and were glad to see it come. They had not been able to help him financially, although they knew he had been unable to purchase the buildings on his own. His closer followers were more affected, but he assured them that their relationship would continue. He would write letters to them, Acharya Prabhakar, Radhe Malik, Mr. Mitra, Dr. Shastri, and he gave them instructions on what they should do, especially Acharya Prabhakar. Abai told him he would be calling for him and expected him to continue as secretary for the League of Devotees, even if they didn't make Jhansi their main residence. Yet it was obvious that this chapter of making ambitious plans for a world movement, going from house to house and village to village, performing Sankirtan, lecturing on the Gita, distributing prasad, this was ended, and it was not likely that he would return, or that the residents of Jhansi could expect to see him again. Shall I end there, or shall I carry on reading?
Very cool.
There's one more paragraph and then
Oh,
it's
right, okay.
chapter.
Yeah. So when Abai left the Bharati Bhavan with its 6-foot-high lettering, League of Devotees, painted across the outside wall, he felt sad. It had been a natural, spontaneous success for him. The young, educated people of Jhansi had looked up to him from the start, and had it not been for the intrigue, he would never have left. But he felt he had no real choice. He had come as a family man on business and was leaving as a homeless vanaprastha, forced to take shelter of Krishna. His plans were uncertain, but his desire was strong and his health good. So he moved on to Mathura, carrying with him the deity of Lord Chaitanya.
Very well. Should have brought back. We found that the verse, there was a Bhagavatam verse that Prabhupada thought of in there, and Hema beavered away and found it. It's from the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. Do you want to read it out?
Yeah. The personality of Godhead said, if I especially favor someone, I gradually deprive him of his wealth. Then the relatives and friends of such a poverty-stricken man abandon him. In this way, he suffers one distress after another.
Yeah. Just can't believe nothing seems to like.
No, but you want the next verse.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably also relevant. When he becomes frustrated in his attempts to make money and instead befriends my devotees, I bestow my special mercy upon him.
Oh, great. That's really relevant because we went to go and make some money. He went back home to go and make money and just got fried of everything. Couldn't believe it when it said even his friends were happy about that women's organisation. Even his mates were sort of going, actually, it's pretty good that they're coming. I think it's he's like getting evicted and then kicked out. Even his friends are like going, actually, I think it's, I think they're a good bunch. Yeah. Like nothing's happened, and he really doesn't want to take sannyas, does he? No. Did you hear that bit when he talked about, I'm definitely not going to take sannyas. And he just think he has to just keep everything just constant surrender. He doesn't know. It's quite amazing actually when you think his whole life has fallen apart, and yeah, it's quite amazing. Don't know if anybody had any comments or anything.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, you can hear me okay?
Oh yeah, yeah, perfect.
Thanks very much to the devotees for reading. It was very nice to listen. Very nice indeed to listen. I really appreciate the devotees reading that. I enjoyed listening to it. Yeah, we think it's difficult spreading Krishna consciousness, and it's like, Prabhupada, his own wife gave away his Bhagavatam, it's like, imagine me come home and all our books were gone, it's like, So, I mean, it's difficult for us, but we can see how difficult it is for Prabhupada, yeah? And, how he kept going somehow or another, and how it worked out in the end, yeah? Because right now I'm wondering, what can I do? What can I do? It's like, to make things happen, and I'm like, okay, follow Bhagavad Gita, trying to associate with the devotees properly, I'm thinking myself, because, I mean, what can I do? I mean, I can't really do very much at all. So it's one of the reasons I joined this Sangha, I thought, well, make good relations with the devotees, connect properly with devotees and, see what happens sort of thing,
Yeah, it's funny with just watching Prabhupada, like actually a lot of the things that he goes through with that League of Devotees. It's exactly, obviously, like, you know, not that we're comparing ourselves directly to Prabhupada in that sense, but like, you know, he's really fired up to do something, and then he looks around and it's like, well, everyone's got money but no one wants to give it to him, you know, like, or he's got one disciple but he's not really acting, you know, and it's like someone's enthusiastic but they're not really. And it's like, I heard one devotee say, whenever you want to do anything for Krishna, there's always two problems. There's no men and no money. There's two. If you ever want to get a project going or do something, there's no men and no money. So how can you? And it's like, so Prabhupada's already gone through all of it, and he's just walking around the streets playing in Mridanga. And so yeah, it's interesting. Like one young guy just sent us a message recently, and he was saying he wants to do some preaching up north. I think he lives in like Warrington or something, and it's just like him on his own, and he wants to help people connect with Krishna. So he's like, have you got any advice on what to do? I was thinking, well, I don't really know what else. You just go out and try. Like,
Yeah, just keep trying.
you just try, and it doesn't really matter. You know, you just do something, and then, like, I think sort of like what you're saying. You know, Bhaktivinode Prabhu was saying, it can be really simple. You don't really know what's going to happen. You can't, in one sense, it's good to have desire to do something big, but like I heard one devotee say that Prabhupada had an idea, or no, I think he had a mission, but he didn't have a plan. One of his disciples was saying like that. He had a mission, but he didn't really have a plan because he never knew what was gonna, you know.
Just took it each step at a time.
Yeah, so we just tried these little things, really basic thing. We would just go out and chant. We'd just talk about Bhagavad Gita, and then that purity of his intention and the sound vibration that he's generating. And then later on, when he goes to America, he just stands under a tree and chant. Anyway, I don't want to spoil it in case you haven't read it, but yeah, just those simple things are actually very powerful in Bhakti, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I went out on Saturday and it was very difficult, you know. I only went out for a couple of hours in the afternoon, but I went out just basically to see if I could speak to anybody even, you know, because there's still a very strict lockdown here in Scotland, and there's no devotees on the street. I was the only one that was out, and it was like people were like a bit stone-faced walking past me, and I had to be careful, you know, social distancing and all that sort of thing, and people walking about with masks on, and I haven't been out. I mean, I generally have been doing the garden for the last 20 years. I mean, before that, Sankirtan, so, but I haven't been out at all on the street for 6 months. But I thought, go out just to see if I can meet someone, you know, talk to someone, just kind of test the water a bit sort of thing, you know. And, you know, it's better. I felt it's better than doing nothing, you know. It's like, who knows who I might meet. I'd rather spend my time that way. I mean, I only gave out like 4 books, and, you know, some people stopped. I was quite happy with myself that went out, but it was quite difficult, to be honest. But I thought, well, better than doing nothing. And as far as I can see, we cultivate desires by our association with the devotees. If we associate with devotees nicely, the desires arise in our hearts to spread Krishna consciousness, because enthusiasm is like infectious, isn't it? You know, it's like, you know, if we sit on our own all the time, we're not so enthused, but association with other devotees, you know, it's like we become enthused, don't we?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we were thinking the same, because it's just 2 of us here, so most of our time is just spent 2 of us. Obviously we have groups and stuff but we just, even like, especially during lockdown, when it really was just 2 of us and a webcam, when it was properly, we were really locked down, and one devotee came to drop something off to us, a donation of books or something to distribute. And I just spoke to him on the driveway for like 5 minutes, and I came, and for the rest of the day I was just like, you know, flying. And then suddenly all these ideas, hang on a minute, we can do this and we can do that. And it's amazing how stagnant you can get. can chant your rounds, you can read, but yeah, when you're actually with devotees who are in it, it's amazing. Yeah, it's very special.
But Einstein said as well, in every difficulty there's an opportunity, because I probably wouldn't have come across you if it wasn't for the lockdown.
Yeah, and it's likewise.
Yeah, we wouldn't have met.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
it was about 2:30 in the morning, and I woke up early, and I had my phone, and I heard one of your kirtans on the phone, and I just started watching it, and it was so good. I really, really liked it. You know, I thought, who's that? Because I didn't know who you were. But it was like 2:30 in the morning, first thing, just woke up, and it was like the two of you were doing this kirtan, and I was like, wow, that's amazing, that's brilliant. You're like, really? You know? And I thought, I'll check them out, you know, and I found out a bit more about you. So it was kind of like good in that sense, you know. The lockdown is like people are going online, and you know, maybe it brought out the best in you. It's like you know, doing that kirtan, because I thought it was great. I thought it was brilliant. You know, it was I don't know, maybe the two of you together in that intense situation and doing things online when you didn't usually, maybe it brought the best out in you, because I thought it was a brilliant kirtan, and it was like, so in that sense, you know, there's always opportunities, you know what I mean? When there's a difficulty, there's always opportunities, you know?
Yeah, we thought that during lockdown, wasn't it? Like, we've been doing certain services, like, you know, running programs in different places, and we had a certain way of doing everything, and you know, we were like, we kind of had this system and a routine and a schedule, and then suddenly lockdown happened, and it just blew everything out of the water. So everything that we'd spent all that time doing, we just couldn't do anymore. And we kind of sat down and we were like, well, do you know what? Some of it was working, but then we were like, actually, quite a lot of it probably wasn't, you know, like, and we were so busy doing these services that we didn't really have time to think about how we were doing them, or why, or how we could improve it. So it kind of backed us into a corner. And effectively, Krishna just took everything we were doing and just ripped it down to the foundations. And it was the best thing that ever happened. And because we actually sat down and had this time to like chant and think, go online. I mean, I don't think devotees have really grasped the whole potential of the online thing, which has been going on for years, you know, but finally devotees are sort of getting their heads around it. And I know when you're like, you know, everything that happens to Prabhupada is one setback after another, isn't it? It's just like, just one problem. And when you get to know the story a bit, you start to see more details in Prabhupada's story. Like, you see one thing happen, and you can see straight away, oh, now I can see how that led to this. And so, yeah, it's been good. I think that the whole lockdown thing's been brilliant. I think it's been absolutely fantastic.
Well, I wasn't doing any online talks till I heard you. It was you two that inspired me. When I watched your Wednesday night thing on Facebook, I thought, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try and see how it goes, you know. Because even doing this is, I mean, last week is the first time I've ever done Zoom with Andy. I'm out and about. I'm an out and about person. I'm always out on the street or in the garden or out somewhere doing something. I mean, I only bought a laptop for the first time like a few months ago, you know. I'm really not a computer person, you know, at all. So this is that last week was the first Zoom, and even this week, you know, I'm afraid to read. I'm like a statue, you know. I'm like so kind of self-conscious, but you know, it's kind of like I suppose, you know, I'll get used to it, you know, and be a bit more confident and maybe read a bit better. But yeah, it was you two that inspired me. I wasn't doing any talks at all, and I started doing little short talks, and I got really good feedback, you know. So that came out of it for me, just listening to you see. So yeah, I've had really, really good feedback over the last couple of months, you know, really good. So thanks very much for inspiring me in that way. It's like, you know, I'm saying to Pallika, well, if it keeps going like this, what's going to happen after the pandemic? You know, it's going to be great. You know, we can't meet any devotees, we can't go to festivals, no Rath Yatra, nothing. It's like, I see the devotees here in Scotland, occasionally the temple's still shut, completely shut, I mean completely. And we had a couple of devotees round on Sunday from Edinburgh, so apart from that, we're like in here, but I do feel fired up, you know. It's like, yeah, a lot of good feedback, a lot of really good feedback over the last couple of months. So it's kind of opened a whole new aspect of Krishna consciousness up for me, you see. So I've got a lot to thank you for that, for inspiring me.
Oh, thank you, because it's funny how it works, because just hearing you say that really inspires us, you know, because we can sit in front of the webcam and do things, and there's a really nice thing going on Wednesday nights. Yeah. Everyone's getting together, and there's a regular little group going. And
everyone's names popping up, writing comments, and everyone's making friends with each other.
That happened this week. Suddenly, you saw people talking to each other in the comments, and it had nothing to do with us. And it was like, oh, that's a good sign. People are starting to make friends with each other. And but it's like, I mean, Hema just saw one girl, because the university students are coming back now, and was it today or yesterday? Yesterday in town. Hema was having a japa walk in town, and she bumped into this girl, and this girl comes most weeks. She comes to the university program on a Monday night, but she only ever comes right at the end for the final kirtan. And she creeps in the back of the room with her friend, and they sit around sort of giggling and sniggering together like naughty schoolgirls. And then they get up in the final kirtan, dance like crazy, come and have prasadam. They never read the book, you know, like and like we hang out, but they don't want to hear the philosophy. They're not really interested, but they're always there. And Hema just bumped into this girl, and this girl was like almost really worried, like, what's going to happen with the uni program? You know, is it still going to go on? Because, you know, everyone's going to really miss it if it's not, you know. And she's into some anxiety about maybe she can't have the kirtan and things like that. And it just makes you think, like, you plug away doing things, and you don't always. It's easy to sit there and sort of think, well, I don't really know what the point is. So, you know, I mean, we obviously know what the point is, but you don't always see the tangible results. I mean, I'm not on that platform where I'm thinking, well, we just do it for the pleasure of Krishna all the time. I'm attached to the result, and I want to see some result. And then now and again, you get this little thing like that. So hearing people say it really inspires you, and think, okay, we got to crack on with this. And
yeah,
little gifts.
I can't wait to meet people, you know, start meeting people that have been listening to me, people making comments, people have been watching you, meeting you too. I mean, I can't wait to meet everyone, because, I mean, yeah, online is great and brilliant, but being together is even better, isn't it? I mean, it's like dancing in a kirtan and, you know, like talking, making arrangements, you know, because, I mean, I'm quite confident that, you know, lots of good things will come from, like, all this online stuff when we all get back together again, you know. I'm very confident, you know, that it's all going to work out great, you know. Well, I mean, it's always difficult, like Prabhupada, there's always difficulties, but, you know, I can't wait to, you know, to start meeting everybody and get together and see what we can do together, you know, because actually, I mean, nothing and nobody can stop you anyway. And a higher platform, nothing and nobody can stop you. They're not powerful enough no material energy or person is powerful enough to stop you being Krishna conscious. So in that sense, I'm really looking forward to, like, you know, Birmingham Kirtan again and Rath Yatra and different Kirtans, you know. I'm really looking forward to that. I can't wait, you know. It's like, you know, George Harrison, Shama Sundar went in to see George Harrison when George Harrison was on his deathbed, you know. And Shama Sundar was wondering, what's he going to be like? Is he going to be like, I don't want to die and all that? And Shama Sundar walked in the room, and George says to him, "Can't wait to see Krishna." He wasn't worried about his money or his fame or women or anything like that. It was just like he couldn't wait to see Krishna. You know, I feel a bit the same. It's I can't wait to meet the devotees now. You know, after hearing all the talks online and getting lots of good feedback and seeing kirtans and things like that. I think it's going to be great. I think there's a lot of potential there. You know, myself.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of people are making connections. Because I think in a lot of ways, even though we're obviously part of one big family, like if you're in the southeast or you're in the north or whatever, like a lot of the time, you know, you don't often mix. You just sort of in your own little kind of groups. But we feel kind of like so much. You can't substitute being in a room of devotees, serving them prasadam and dancing. But we do feel more connected with everybody as a whole in that sense. So when everything opens up again, that you know, you can only imagine what will happen. It's and we just don't know. Just like with Prabhupada, he just gets on a train and goes to Mathura or something. I have no idea what's going to unfold in front of him at all, but you know it's going to be good because Krishna's involved in it. You know, so you know it will be great.
Yeah, right. Because even here in Scotland, we kind of lived in isolation from the rest of ISKCON, you know. Like, I joined here in 89, and, you know, all through the 90s, we did live in a bit of isolation from the rest of ISKCON. We were advised to, actually, you know, just to stay here and listen to the one spiritual master, and we were very kind of, you know, Rita Andrade says it's like, he's like, here we are, you know, living in our intensive care and isolation, you know, and I thought he's got a point there, you know, he's got a bit of a point there, because even in Scotland, we lived in isolation, and I don't think we've quite come out of it, you know, because I don't think we've quite, so it's really good to connect in this way, you know, because I didn't even know who you were, I'd never even heard your names before. I think I met Hema Mukhi once in Liverpool, maybe. Liverpool Theatre.
Yeah,
I think you were in a minibus with us once, you know.
Okay.
I remember you singing once there, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have been to the Rath Theatre, so it could be, yeah.
Hema gets minibuses with people all the time.
My mum and dad are from Liverpool, so.
Yeah, I know your dad a bit. I know your dad. Ragnar, isn't it?
Yeah, Ragnar Batter, yeah, it's my dad.
Right, yeah, I know him, yeah, I do know him, because I spoke to a Hoksaja Krishna, you know Hoksaja, yeah?
Yeah.
To him, and I told you, I told him that I was watching you both, and like connecting with you both, and he told me who your dad was, so I remembered then, I thought, yeah, I remember you as well once from Liverpool, Rath Theatre. I kind of remember you in the minibus or singing or something like that. You know, I don't know if you come up to Scotland with us, but I remember you a little bit, but I didn't know. I've never met Mantra Caitanya, or I've met what's the devotee, the other devotees in this group.
Mahamantra prabhu.
Oh yeah, Mahamantra. Yeah, I know him well. Yeah, we know each other well. He's been to Scotland many times. We've met many times. Yeah, I know him very well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting lots of people and getting together, see what we can do. You know. Yeah.
It's definitely opening things up, and exciting times. Very exciting time. Yeah.
Yeah, you sometimes wonder, don't you? You're like, you know, what's the point? Are we going to get anywhere? What can I do? You know, is it going to work out? Is it going to make a difference? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm always thinking like that. Are we making a difference? Is it making a difference? You know, because when I go into towns and things like that, sometimes it looks pretty dire and people look as if they haven't got any kind of future. And the way the government, the education system is, it's like, well, what chance have I got? You know what I mean? It's like, what can I do about this? You know, it's like, you know, it's overwhelming, you know, but at the same time, there's nobody more powerful than Krishna, I suppose, and just depend on Krishna, you know, because we're reading about Jhansi and Prabhupada, and I mean, he kept trying, didn't he? And look what came about from that. I mean, we wouldn't be talking just now, we wouldn't be doing this guitar if it wasn't for Prabhupada, right? So, you know, we can be impaired by Prabhupada, can't we? We can be impaired by our spiritual masters, you know.
Yeah, it's the desire. I was just thinking how to answer this young guy that wrote to me about doing something in Warrington. He wanted some advice. I was like, well, I don't really know him or his situation. And the best bit of advice I could think of to give him is just also based on my own experience, but it's just to try and cultivate a really strong desire to do it. And it's everything in Bhakti is kind of predicated, or everything in the whole world is like kind of predicated on your desire. So you just cultivate that desire really strongly, and then Krishna will facilitate everything. And like you look at Prabhupada, he does, you know, he's like, his business is falling apart, everything's kind of falling apart, and the only thing he's really got is that desire, the instruction of his spiritual master, and his desire to carry out that instruction. That's pretty much all Prabhupada's got, isn't it? And everything actually flows out of that, because he's got this deep, deep, unshakable desire, you know. So in that sense, I think if we cultivate that, that's how I understand things. I mean, I don't know, I'm just fumbling around in the dark really, but that's how I understand it so far in my sort of journey in Bhakti, is you just try and do whatever it takes to cultivate that desire. And I know when I go to the university here, that desire becomes really strong, because like you said, it's just hope, like this world's hopeless for everyone. Hopeless case, this planet is just, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And I look at the university and all these young people that are there, and I think like, okay, you know, even if you have to be like a one-man or a two-man army, you just got to somehow take it on, and Krishna will sort everything else out, and you know, just give it a go. And we're so lucky we've got Prabhupada as that example. I love reading these pastimes, because you really just fires you up, and you just, you know, you think, yeah, I'm gonna have a crack at that. Yeah, I'm gonna give that a go. You know, it's like part of our family tradition, isn't it? Just to sort of, yeah. Jai. Well, Hare Krishna. I don't know if anyone else had any last things, just any points or anything of comments, but it's 8 o'clock now.
Yeah, well, you know, let's hope it's a good week. I've been looking forward to this all week. Actually, there isn't a day went past when I haven't thought, oh, I'm really looking forward to the next Lilamrita reading. Honestly, you know, it's every day I've thought, you know, great, brilliant, looking forward to this, you know, because I was thinking about going somewhere today, and I was thinking maybe going a wee bit further afield, and I thought, no, because I won't be back for 6:30, you know, so I just went to a nearby town today, so I could be back on time, you know. But yeah, I mean, I hope it's another week like the last one, even better, you know. I've been working on my japa lately, you know. The spiritual master, he says chant japa in a way that you make a different type of advancement every day, you know.
Wow.
Like you advance in a different way every day, a different aspect of Krishna consciousness, you know. So I've been working on that. It's kind of worked out quite nicely, you know, connecting nicely with devotees and things like that. So yeah, it's been a good week since last week. You know, I'm thankful for your association and the inspiration I'm getting from your online stuff, and this kind of, you know, let's hope, you know, even the next week will be even better than last week, sort of thing, you know. Live from week to week for the Lilamrita readings. Well, the folks said you used to joke like live from feast to feast, you know. So it's like, you know, you got to live for something, and you got to have something to live for, and it's like something to look forward to, something like you got to have something to live for. You know, I have to admit, Prasadam this morning was totally amazing, just totally out of this world, you know, like memorable occasion, you know.
What did you have?
It was just porridge and fruit, you know, but it was so nice. It was just like, this is Krishna, you know. This is right, you know. Yeah, so thanks very much for setting this up, and
Pleasure.
yeah,
Thanks for coming. Yeah, taking part. I just one quick thing in talking about having something to look forward to, and in the mornings we haven't been hosting it, but we've been taking part in like a UK Japa group. Mahamantra Prabhu's been there,
And Lucy.
oh, and Lucy, who's just had to go. I just saw in the chat she had to leave, and a few others. And there's people all over the country doing it, and sometimes Vishnu Swami's there and other devotees. But it's talking about associating with devotees and mentioning chanting japa. I can send you the Zoom link. Like we just switch on the Zoom thing, and on your screen you can just see the devotees, and everyone just chants their rounds together in the morning. And sometimes the volume's up, or sometimes we'll put the volume down. But
5:15.
yeah, it's 5:15. Yeah, until 7. So if I can send you the Zoom link for that.
yeah, send me the link, because sometimes I listen to Bhakti Chaitanya Swami doing japa, and I chant along with that.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, I'm generally chanting round about that time. Over the last week as well, I've made friends a bit with Helena, the lady, it's the other lady that's in this group.
Oh, there's Lucy.
Lucy, yeah, not Helen. Lucy, yeah. I've made friends a bit with her. She's given me some really nice comments and things like that.
Great.
You know, on a few short talks she's listened to, you know. So we've struck up a little bit of a friendship, you know, very positive, like, you know, nice connection there, you know.
Great.
So that's, you know, it's building and building and building. It's like, you know, yeah, this pandemic is holding us all back, you know what I mean? It's like, we gotta, you know, somehow or another. There was an instance of a pandemic in India, and one old Babaji got everybody to chant Hare Krishna, and the pandemic subsided, you know?
Yeah, I heard that story, yeah.
You know, I've tried that, you know, but it hasn't subsided, but you know, well, I've tried to chant as much as I can, but, you know, who knows? If we build up good connections, then by the time we all meet, it'll be like there'll be such a nice spiritual energy going out to the world that, you know, it will improve the world situation, you know?
Yeah, I think it feels sort of like pulling back a catapult sort of thing. And, you know, at the moment, it's just getting the tension's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then when it breaks and we can all go out, it just feels like it's going to be, you know, we're going to get fired out, and it's going to be, yeah. And I think Kesava Bharati Maharaj, at the very beginning of the lockdown, he said, he was saying to devotees that we should use this time wisely to go deeper and to have, you were also saying, have deeper relationships with each other and the people around us who are near to us, and build some kind of foundation so that when we get out of it, something big will happen, you know?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's happening.
Yeah, sure, yeah, well.
I'm just saying, yeah, definitely it's been a real help to my spiritual life, being forced to stay in and, you know, and join all these new groups. I'm in about 26 different groups during the week, you know, and
Wow.
only one of them is like a work group, so yeah, 25 KC groups during the week.
Far out. That's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a serious amount of hearing and chanting. Brilliant.
Never been so good.
Yeah. I really do feel like something's brewing, and we don't quite know what it is yet, but I feel like we're sort of preparing for something to happen. So That's how
it's Holy Name Week as well. So yeah, it's going to be lots of 24-hour kirtans going on, and global chanting. And
amazing. Yeah. Far out. Yeah, there was a nice global pandemic kirtan group going on Facebook. Yeah.
It's like a worldwide, over 24 hours.
Wild. Yeah. Amazing. And we get to do it all again tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Far out. Great. Yeah.
See you all then.
Yeah. Okay.
Hare
Brilliant.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you, Association. We'll see you tomorrow. Yeah.
Joy. Over.
Glories to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Joy.